Let's talk a little bit about deductive reasoning. We've talked about inductive reasoning, the scientific method, and seen that it has these three major shortcomings when dealing with living things. Deductive reasoning is the exact opposite of inductive. Inductive says, study the parts, then eventually you'll understand the whole thing. And if you don't understand the whole thing, at least you can extrapolate from the knowledge you do have and make judgments about the unknown. Deductive reasoning is the opposite. It says don't study the parts at all. Don't mess with the detail. Understand the principle. Deal in principles. Try and find eternal truths and then apply those to all things, even the things you don't fully understand. If the principle is a truth, if it's valid, then it'll be truth all the way down the line, whether we understand it or not. B.J. Palmer made a lot of chiropractors scratch their heads with an expression, get the big idea and all else follows. And then a lot of chiropractors have spent the next 30 years trying to find what is the big idea. No, that's not what he's talking about. There's not a big idea. He says when you're studying anything, get the big idea about it, whatever it is you're studying. When you're studying chemistry, get the concept, don't memorize minutia. It bothers me that in so many ways of life, we are studying micro-minutia instead of understanding principles. B.J. Palmer said, get the big idea and all else follows. Study the principles and the other parts will fall into place. Understanding will come instead of memorization. Don't try to memorize things. Don't try to understand this human body. You never will. You'll never know the parts of that person's body. Understand the principles upon which it functions. Well, what are those principles? How do we understand them? The major premise of chiropractic, and I should point out that while I've been quick to show you the shortcomings of inductive reasoning, I must, in all honesty, also show you the potential shortcomings in deductive reasoning. As a matter of fact, I would recommend that each of us in any field of endeavor balance the two, one against the other. I don't want you to deal only in deductive reasoning. I think you need to cross-check yourself, and if things don't stand up, great theories can be shot down by proof that they're wrong. So we can't depend just on theories that we assume are truth. We have to use inductive reasoning as a cross-reference to prove ourselves. It's just that when they don't tally, let's not be in such a great rush to assume that that which we have proven to ourselves is necessarily right. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say you go down to a yard goods store and you buy a yard of cloth. Now, how do you know you got a yard? Well, that's easy. You take it home and you measure it against your yardstick. And if it only comes out to 34 inches instead of 36, you've been cheated. Unless your yardstick is bent. Now that's the point. We're trying to find truth, and many of us are studying with a bent yardstick. Our minds have been warped by our prior education. Remember, we were the kids who grew up with mothers telling us, eat your spinach, it's good for you. With school teachers telling us that this is right and that is wrong. With religious teachers telling us this is right and that is wrong. We went on to high school and college, and everybody's telling us what truth is. Maybe the yardstick is bent. I wish we could just empty our minds. I tell this to groups of students coming in to study philosophy of chiropractic when I'm teaching. I say, what I would like to do is empty your cup. The French say you can't make new wine in old barrels, because when you do, the new wine takes on a taint from what was in there before. It's always tainted. And your new thinking is bound to be influenced by what you have thought before, by your upbringing, by your background, by people you've trusted, by people whose advice you've followed. What I would like students to do is be able to scour out their cup completely. Empty it, scour it, clean it. When it's absolutely spotless, smash it and throw it away and start with a new one that's never been used before. You know, we're asking the world to make judgments about chiropractic. A chiropractor perhaps appears in a court case to testify as an expert witness, and the jury is supposed to give an unbiased ear. Do you know anybody who is unbiased in matters of health? There's nobody who is allowed to grow up without being given opinions and told that they're facts. Now, each of us has certain opinions about the universe. If you're not able to evaluate your own past opinions, then what I say will either be accepted or rejected because it agrees or disagrees with what you already know to be true. This is the problem that we're facing. When you share your ideas with people outside, they already have their own ideas, they have their own belief system. And the trouble with deductive reasoning is it is based upon a premise that we hold to be true, but which is unprovable. Deductive reasoning always comes from a major premise, what the philosophers call a priori, without anything before. Interestingly enough, the a priori basis of chiropractic, the first principle of chiropractic is there is a universal intelligence in all matter, constantly giving to it all of its properties and activities, thus maintaining it in existence. Now that sounds a little mysterious. Remember, it was written over 90 years ago. People used different language then. What they were saying is that the universe is not random, it's in a state of harmony. All of the parts interact harmoniously. Nothing happens randomly. There's no such thing as luck. There's cause and effect. There are other laws that regulate the universe. There is, in fact, an intelligence maintaining matter in existence, maintaining the universe in existence. And people hearing this, hey, wait a minute, that's not scientific. You know, you're right. But it's not meant to be scientific. It's meant to be truth. You know, we tend to believe inductively that if it's not scientific, it's not truth. Remember, science can't measure intangibles. If there is a universal intelligence, by definition, it's intangible. Certainly, if it is infinite, our finite little minds can't understand it. And yet there are people who say, well, if I can't understand it, I'm not going to believe it. It's fascinating. First of all, let me say chiropractic is not a religion, even though it starts out by saying there is a universal intelligence. You know, there are lots of people, lots of groups, lots of organizations that are not religions that accept the fact that the universe is maintained in existence by intelligence, not necessarily a person. It's interesting that all of the religions, all those that I've heard of, have the same premise. They say there is a universal intelligence, and our job is to get in touch with it, to communicate with it, to understand what it wants and do what it wants and make a better universe for it. And that's the job of religions. Sometimes they disagree with each other about what it is or what it wants. But you see, they're delving into the intangible and trying to understand it. Now, let's understand, our finite little minds will never understand the infinite. We can accept it, but we can't understand it. I accept that there is a universal intelligence. Why do I accept that? Because B.J. Palmer said so? No, that would be inductive reasoning. I accept it a priori, yes, but it has to make sense to me. See, this is where I draw my balance between inductive and deductive reasoning, and I want to warn you of something. The major premise of chiropractic states there is a universal intelligence. I can't prove that to you. In fact, I can't prove anything to you. If I come in here soaking wet and say, hey, it's raining outside, I haven't proved that it's raining. I grab you by the scruff of the neck and the seat of the pants and I push you out, then you get soaked. I haven't proved to you that it's raining. You could choose to believe there's some guy sitting up on a cloud with a watering can. Proof exists in your own mind only. Proof of anything exists in what you hold to be logical. Now, I accept the major premise of chiropractic, that there is a universal intelligence, because to my mind it is logical, and I will gladly share with you the things that convince me. And if they convince you too, then you've proved it to yourself. I certainly can't prove or disprove. I can merely share with you my feelings, my ideas, what convinces me there is a universal intelligence. I frankly cannot conceive of anything being organized without intelligence. And I want to warn you, if you go with me on this one point, I've got you. You're hooked. So don't let me get away with anything. Think very carefully. Can you think of anything that is organized without intelligence? Oh, you can talk about robots doing this and that. They don't have intelligence. No, but the guys that made them and programmed them had intelligence. Unless we have robots that can make other robots, that can do different things, that do more than the first robot could. You know, when robots make robots, they can only make them as smart as themselves. Can you think of anything that could happen without intelligence? I believe that organization takes intelligence. Let's say we all decide to go on a picnic. Okay? We've agreed we're going on a picnic? Good, I'll see you there. No? Won't it organize itself? No, things don't organize themselves. Somebody has to say, okay, let's have it at such and such a place. I'll rent the hall, I'll bring the beer, I'll bring the salad, I'll bring the peanuts, whatever. Now, even within that organization where we've all been assigned jobs, there's still need for, or still a place for randomness. 8 people show up wearing a red shirt. They didn't plan it. Just random, just happened. We'll organize another picnic. Maybe nobody comes in a red shirt. Maybe 8 again. There's randomness even within organization. But you can't have organization of any kind without intelligence. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because if I can show you organization in the universe, I've proved the existence of universal intelligence. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, Reggie, I'm not going that far. What is this universal intelligence? Is that some God thing? No, I don't know what some God thing is. All I know is when I use the term universal intelligence, I mean intelligence of the universe. Right? That's all. What is it? What does it look like? I have no idea. I'm not trying to define it. I'm merely saying it is. See, it's the job of religions to define and identify and even personify and put labels on. That's not my job. As a philosopher, I can look around and say, hey, you know something? This universe is organized. Or it isn't. It's one or the other. If it is organized, then there has to be intelligence. Where? No, I don't know where. Let's just put a label on it. We'll call it universal intelligence, meaning that intelligence which maintains organization in the universe. Okay? If there is such a thing. Now, what I'm going to try and do now is share with you the thoughts that convince me that the universe is organized, that it's not random, that there is a law of cause and effect. It's funny, all of science accepts the fact that there's a law of cause and effect. And yet some would dispute that there is organizing intelligence to maintain laws. Well, the laws just are. Luck, random. Can I break a law? How do we convince people that the universe is organized? Well, let's start with this. The universe is pretty big to talk about, so we're going to have to reduce our conversation to some little part of the universe. I think we can all agree that all physical matter of the universe is comprised of atoms. Right? That's all there is in the universe is atoms. Physically, there is nothing else. Physically, tangibly, there's nothing but atoms. Every atom has a nucleus which is positively charged, and in orbit around it, a number of electrons, which are negatively charged. Everything in the whole universe is made up of atoms, and every atom is made up in the same way. Now, the number of electrons differs. In fact, that's what differentiates one substance from another. It even gives the properties to the substances. What are these electrons, and what is the proton? What are the neutrons? What do they consist of? Well, they're little particles of matter. Oh, no, they're not. See, I hate to tell you how old I am. When I went to school, they taught us that these are little particles which are bound together. But now we find they're not particles at all. They're units of energy. I guess it was Enrico Fermi who came up with this observation first, or the first that I know of. He said that matter and energy are really one and the same thing. They're interchangeable. Theoretically, you could convert matter into energy and could convert energy into matter. Nobody paid a great deal of attention except another scientist. Incidentally, Enrico Fermi got himself a Nobel Prize for that observation. A few years later, another paisano who came along, a fellow by the name of Albert Einstein, and he said, you know, Fermi's right. Not only are energy and matter interchangeable, but I can give you the formula to do it. He said, E equals mc squared. Maybe the most famous formula of all time. Energy is matter multiplied by the square of the speed of light, whatever that is. I don't understand how you multiply matter by light, but apparently these guys know what they're doing. He said matter and energy really are the same thing. All energy, or rather all matter, is energy bound up in little packages which we call atoms. And they're in balance with each other. The positive charge of the nucleus equals the negative charge, and that holds it together in bonds and valences. I don't understand all this talk about bondage, but I do understand that everything that is matter is made up of energy locked up in these little packages. This marker that I'm holding in my hand, this pen, consists of nothing but atoms. Every atom, without exception, is energy. There's enough energy in this marker to blow the state of Pennsylvania off the map. But I'm not afraid to hold it and shake it and rattle it and burn it and hit it with a hammer. Why? Because the energy is locked up. Each atom has its energy locked up. Einstein came along and said, I can change that. I can take this atom, bombard it with ionizing radiation, and shake it loose. I can separate the nucleus from the electrons. And in so doing, I won't cause an explosion. It's not an atomic explosion. It's an atomic release of energy. The matter doesn't get blown apart. It ceases to exist. It's not matter anymore. You know, when you have an explosion, you blow up a building, all the bits of the building are there. If you had enough patience, you get all the bits and assemble them again and put the building back together. You can't do that with an atom. When it explodes, if you'll forgive the misuse of the term, because it doesn't explode. It changes into energy. It no longer exists as matter. The only way it can be matter is if it is organized into this little package. And if you change the organization, change the number of electrons in the outer ring, you've changed the substance. Now it's glass instead of lead, or it's flesh and blood instead of microphone. The nature of the substance depends upon the organization of the electrons around the nucleus. What Einstein is saying is there is organization causing matter to exist. Disturb the organization and matter doesn't exist again. And for saying this, he got a Nobel Prize. Now in 1895, an obscure fish peddler from Iowa, originally from Canada, came along and said there is a universal intelligence in all matter, constantly giving it all of its properties and activities, thus maintaining it in existence. He didn't get a Nobel Prize. He was labeled a quack. He was a little before his time. That was 1895. But you realize that Einstein is saying exactly the same thing. Matter could not exist without organization of energy. Now, when there is organization, there must be what? Intelligence. We already agreed, I think, that you can't have organization without intelligence. Yeah, but who thought of it? Who put the atom together? Not a who, not even an it. There is intelligence maintaining the universe, not just in existence, but in a state of balance and organization. Hey, what about the farmers and the coyotes and the chickens? You think it's fortunate that when fish lay eggs, they lay millions at a time, and other marine creatures come along and eat up all the eggs until just enough survive to maintain the balance? And that every time human beings come along and improve nature by messing up the balance, they ruin it and they suffer for it? Maybe that intelligence knows a heck of a lot more, has a balance there that we can't see. We don't see the relationships. I can't see the good of flies and mosquitoes and poisonous snakes. But they're part of the balance. And if you upset the balance, the effect is far-reaching all the way down the line. Unless you think you can improve the universe, then we have to accept that what it is perfection. Let's go back to the premise. There is a universal intelligence in all matter, constantly giving to that matter all of its properties, all of its activities, and thus maintaining matter in existence. You say, Reggie, that's terrific, I believe you. So what? What the hell's that got to do with chiropractic? Well, that's the basis of chiropractic. You see, chiropractic is a philosophy, deductively derived from that premise. We get to that premise a priori. Question, do you believe it? Don't answer me, I don't know, it's your own business. But you really have to decide. One thing we do know, either there is a universal intelligence or there isn't. Let's not sit on the fence and say, well, I believe you're both right. I got into a discussion with somebody like that the other day. Two fellas arguing. One says it's black, the other says it's white. The other says, yes, I agree with you both. Hey, let's have some guts around here. Let's take a stand. Either there is a universal intelligence or there isn't. And I don't expect you to be able to prove one way or the other. All the theists look at the proof and they say, of course there's universal intelligence. And all the atheists look at the same proof and they say, of course there isn't. What fascinates me is that the atheists sneer at the theists. Well, you're just taking it on faith. What are you taking it on? Proof? No, you can't be an atheist without faith. You have to have faith that all this happened by good luck. We're both taking it on faith. We don't know the answer. We can't see it. We can't measure it. We can't weigh it. See, this is the trouble. We want proof that there's a universal intelligence. Hey, if it were provable, we'd have no problem. The whole concept is of intangibility, of something that is infinite, and even if it were tangible, our finite little mind couldn't understand it. But it's even intangible. You have a tangible mind. Do me a favor. Would you please think of a color you've never seen? Visualize a color you've never seen. You can't do it, can you? Think of infinite time, time without end, without beginning. You can't visualize that. How about space? Can you visualize limitless space? No, you have to keep putting boundaries there. If you can't visualize limitless time or limitless space or limitless color, how can you visualize a limitless universe and all the things that maintain it in existence? You have to either accept on faith or reject on faith, but either way, you're going on faith. What I did, for me, was pick the one which seemed most logical. I cannot conceive of this beautiful organization in the universe happening without organization. If it's not organization, it's luck. It's either organized or it's random. Now let's see if randomness makes sense to you. Some idiot sophomore philosopher at one point said if an infinite number of monkeys had an infinite number of typewriters for an infinite period of time, they'd eventually turn out War and Peace. It's a brilliant statement to make because nobody can prove it wrong, especially when there's no such thing as an infinite anything. You see, infinity means beyond my comprehension, beyond anybody's possibility. But let's look at those parts of the universe we can see. Don't you see balance? Now, can you believe that's luck? Look, I believe in luck. Let's say you and I are going out to lunch. One of us has to buy it. Let's flip a coin. Right? It comes down heads, I'll pay. Comes down heads the next time, comes down heads the next time. Hey, after about 20 or 30 times, I'm going to get a little suspicious. You see? So I believe in coincidence. I believe in the randomness of the picnic, but I'll tell you something. If you all show up in a red shirt, I don't believe it anymore. I think somebody put the word out, wear a red shirt. Now, when I look at the universe, what I see goes beyond the possibilities of coincidence. It can't just be luck that fish have that number of eggs and human beings have one or two unless we mess with their chemistry. Change them chemically and all of a sudden they start having aberrations and multiples and so on. But look at the harmony and the balance in the universe. Look at our one-straw revolution and the farmer whose insects were taken care of by the natural phenomena of the frogs and the worms and the birds and the turtles. And when we mess with our environment, haven't you noticed we always upset it? Nobody's ever yet improved upon the balance of the environment. Maybe there's a reason for that. Let's look at other things. Supposing you came to the United States from some island in the Pacific Ocean where you're totally uncivilized, as we use the term, you had never seen or heard of a wristwatch or a clock. You didn't know what it was. Now you're walking along the street in the United States and you find this thing lying on the street. You have no idea what it is. You pick it up, try and put it around your neck as an ornament. It won't go. Finally, you figure it's an ornament. You get it on your wrist. Hey, that's fascinating. I love that. Oh, look at that. It's got little hands going tick-tock, tick. And pretty soon I can hear the sound. I'm curious. I may be uneducated, but I'm not stupid. Now I'm curious. Pretty soon I've got the back off, and I see inside wheels turning, relating to each other, cogs slipping in together. diamonds at exactly the stress points. The front, by some sheer luck, is made of glass that you can see through instead of metal, which you can't, so you can see the hands. I don't know what you believe about this thing. You might even figure out that this is a device for cutting time up into little pieces. I know there's one thing you'd never believe, that this was made by accident. See, one day, a whole bunch of rocks and glass and stone and diamonds fell down off a mountaintop, and by some luck, they came into this shape. Now that's stretching the bounds of coincidence a little bit far, isn't it? Well, that's how I feel about the universe. Theoretically, I guess it's possible that this watch made itself. Theoretically, it's possible the universe made itself. But it's going beyond the bounds of reason to me. See, I have to know one of two things. Either it made itself, and it keeps itself in this condition of balance, or it's intelligently organized. I choose to believe that it's intelligently organized because that makes more sense to me. That's all. That's why I accept the premise of chiropractic. And you say, well, what has that to do with adjusting the spine? Absolutely nothing. But I told you before you started, chiropractic is a damn sight more than adjusting the spine. It's an understanding of man and his environment. It is an understanding of us and our relationships with each other and the universe. And if you don't believe the universe is organized, then what the hell's the point in getting involved? So we do believe the universe is organized, and we do want to get involved, and that's what chiropractic is about. Involvement in the universe and the people who inhabit it, and the other living things that inhabit it, and an understanding that they're all interrelated to each other. There's nothing we do that doesn't affect something or somebody. You get on a bus with a smile, and you've changed somebody's day. You get on a bus with a scowl, and you've changed somebody else's day. Everything you do, your moods, your attitudes, your words, your actions, affects those around you. There's an interrelationship. And chiropractic is more than adjusting the spine. Let's reduce chiropractic down to this dealing with the living body. Let's forget the big purpose of a universal philosophy for a moment and look at the small picture. Chiropractic says, while a universal intelligence maintains all matter in existence, living matter is maintained at a different kind of level. Notice in all of the atoms of the universe, the atoms in this marker, if I take a pin and stick it into this end and cut a hole in it, well, certain things are going to happen. The ink will leak out. Eventually, the action of the air on the ink will cause it to clot, and it will heal itself. The ink will stop running out. Or all the ink will run out and then it'll stop. And you say, well, okay, maybe that's life. Now let's try things with living things. If I cut my finger and the blood oozes out and then it stops and heals, hasn't that done exactly what the ink did when it ran out of this pen? Yeah, seems to be. Let's try it with a corpse. And we cut the corpse and the blood runs out, it clots. See, we proved it. All you proved was that your first example of bleeding as evidence of intelligence was not a good example. Let's try other things. Let's put food into my body. Now that food gets broken down and converted. Its ingestion causes the body to make certain chemicals, and the food that I ate this evening, by tomorrow, will be walking, talking, thinking flesh and blood. The cut in the finger not only stopped bleeding, but now it's healed. New living cells are there. Let's go back to the marker. Hey, scrape off the dried off paint and there's still a hole in there. Nothing came to help it. If I cut my finger and get an infection, certain cells from the liver come traipsing over to the site of the infection to fight the infection. They do their job and then they go back to the liver. In a living body, the parts interrelate with each other. If all matter is maintained in existence by universal intelligence, there seems to be a different sort of intelligence maintaining living things. Yeah, it's a part of universal intelligence, but in a way it's apart from universal intelligence. And every cell has it. Let's take a a one-celled animal, the amoeba. Everybody studies the amoeba because it's a nice, big, fat, one-celled animal. And we're going to take a living amoeba and a dead amoeba. Physically, they're the same. This one's fresh killed. I just killed it myself, okay? A dead amoeba. Now, I'm going to stick a pin into the side of the dead amoeba, and it'll just penetrate and make a hole. All right, nothing smart about that. Now let's take the same pin and push it into this one, and we'll see this cell, all of the atoms in the cell, combine and work together, and the body of the cell moves away from the pin. Now, of course, if I get really nasty and stab it, I can move faster than it can, and I can kill it anyway. But if I give it time to adapt, it will adapt. The dead cell, I can give it a month, it won't adapt. It's dead. The ability to adapt is one of the properties of life. Living things are different from dead things. Now let's take away the pin, and we'll put a speck of food up against the side of the dead amoeba, and it sits there. We put that same speck of food up against the live amoeba. It doesn't move away from it. This live amoeba knows the difference between a pin and a speck of food, between a piece of gravel and a piece of food. Instead of flowing away from it, it flows towards it, surrounds it, ingests it, and converts its atoms into its own substance. Unless it doesn't happen to need food, in which case it ignores it. Now, it does that intelligently, doesn't it? I mean, this is an organization. Isn't that manifestation of intelligence? I'm suggesting to you that the living amoeba, that one-celled animal, has a special cellular intelligence that the dead amoeba doesn't have. In fact, I'll go further. I will suggest the difference between life and death. The difference between the living and the dead is this ability to reorganize itself, what the scientists call the ability to adapt. Adaptation is merely reorganizing your own chemistry, your own atoms. Living cells can reorganize their own chemistry, meaning they have intelligence. It's not random. It's done intelligently. They take in some and they spit out other. Now, for the sake of language, whatever intelligence runs that cell, I agree it's part of universal intelligence, it's part of all the intelligence in the universe, but I'm going to stick a label on it. I'm going to call it cellular intelligence of that amoeba. Your body consists of nothing but cells, just like the amoeba cells. And every cell has its own intelligence. As the blood goes by, your little cells pull out from the blood those chemicals and those foods and those oxygen molecules that they need. They don't pull in what they don't need. They just take what they need and they dump their own waste products out into the bloodstream. That seems to be pretty smart, intelligent action. So your body has cellular intelligence in every cell. Now here's what we have to understand. When we talked about universal intelligence, I said, where is it located? Is it sitting on a cloud up in heaven? No. Where is it? Our problem is we want to talk about this intangible as though it were tangible. We want to understand it, give it properties that we can read. But you can't understand it. You can accept it. You can't say where it is. It doesn't have physical, tangible presence. This is an intangible. And yet it's as real as all things which are physical and tangible. It's just not identifiable by our five senses. Similarly, where is the intelligence in the cell? Those of you biologists, we have a biology. Where's the intelligence? Is it in the nucleus? In the nucleolus? In the mitochondria? Where do we find the intelligence? It's not anywhere. You don't find it anywhere. You can get this thing and cut it up. You'll never find it. Do you ever take an electric battery and try and find the electricity? Where is it? You cut it up in little pieces. Not only you can't find it, but when you put it back together, it's gone. Where did the electricity go to? It didn't go anywhere. There was nothing in the first place. It's not a tangible thing. And the intelligence that runs this cell, it's not anywhere. It doesn't have tangible presence. We're not saying there is an intelligence. We're saying living things function intelligently. They organize themselves. But in the human body, we said every little cell takes from the blood what it needs. You know what cells do? They have buddies. Some cells don't have access to blood. So what they do is the cell next to them takes the blood and takes oxygen from the blood or food from the blood, passes it through its own walls out to the next cell. There's cooperation from cell to cell. Now you don't get that in the amoeba because that's a one-celled animal. You're a multi-celled animal and your cells blend together and each one helps the other one. And now we've got a whole bunch of cells and we're going to call that tissue. By definition, tissue is any group of similar cells working together to perform a specific function. This tissue we're going to call muscle tissue. Okay, it's a muscle, and it works now as a unit. Some of the cells work while others rest. They pass food to each other, they pass oxygen to each other, they dump each other's wastes. One gets hurt, the other one comes to the rescue. Now, maybe that's luck. See? When I see this kind of organization, I say, hey, that's pretty damned intelligent. And I'm going to label this. I'm going to call this tissue intelligence. Now, tissue consists of any group of similar cells working together to perform a specific function. Sometimes in the body, a whole group of dissimilar tissues work together to perform a function. The heart has dissimilar tissues. It's got fat tissue, it's got muscle tissue, it's got nerve tissue, it's got blood vessel tissue, all working together. The muscles squeeze and the valves open and the ligaments pull, and all of this stuff goes on in perfect harmony. How in the world do we coordinate the activity of the millions upon millions of cells that make up a heart? All of the tissues work together. When tissues work together, that's called an organ. Why do you think it's called an organ? Because it's organized. That's what the word means. If it's organized, what must it have? Intelligence. Okay, so I'm going to call that organ intelligence. If you want to be fancy, you're going to have heart intelligence, a kidney intelligence, or left kidney intelligence and right kidney intelligence. I'm going to just label them all. Organ intelligence. And a whole bunch of organs work together systematically in system intelligence. Let's talk about the digestive system. All the parts work as a team. I stand here and I drink a glass of water and it goes down. Gloop, 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 gloop. I say, hey, well, that's gravity. No, it isn't. I can stand on my head and drink the glass of water and it'll go uphill against gravity. Because there's a whole bunch of little muscles working in sequence to help each other. And if the sequence were out, instead of that water going down, 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 it'd go down, up, down, up, down, up. See, there has to be organization. And the whole system works together. And the body consists of many systems. And all the systems harmonize together. And there seems to be some dispute as to how many cells there are in the average human body. We're winning all kinds of numbers. But believe me, there are more than 7 or 8. There's an awful lot of cells in the human body. One of the figures we hear thrown about is 25 to 30 quadrillion. Another figure I heard is 70,000 billion. In either case, it's a lot of cells. And in your body right now, all of those cells are working in total harmony, each one doing its job not for itself, but for every other one. And chiropractic has recognized that this fascinating organization of 70,000 billion cells, or whatever the number may be, is organized by what it has labeled the innate intelligence of the body. All right, innate intelligence, the built-in intelligence of life. It's amazing how some chiropractors trying to buy their way into the world of science have given up their chiropractic and say, well, that's not a scientific term. How can it be? It was invented by chiropractors. Well, you're right, it's not a scientific term. In fact, I went to the scientific textbooks to find a better term. The canon, the physiologist, refers to it as the wisdom of the body. I like that term. I find nothing wrong with that, the wisdom of the body. Gray's Anatomy is even better. Gray's Anatomy calls it that mysterious something. Now there's a scientific term for you. But whatever it is, this innate intelligence, this wisdom, runs the 25 to 30 quadrillion or 70,000 billion cells, whichever number is right, that comprise the human body. This intelligence must know about the cells it organizes and reorganizes. What is the job of this innate intelligence? Life, survival. Its job is to reorganize itself. In order to stay alive, a living thing must constantly adapt to an ever-changing environment. As the environment changes, if you can't adapt almost instantly, you don't survive. Survival is dependent upon your ability to adapt, meaning to change in perfect harmony so that the parts can do what they're supposed to. You're sitting here now and your heart is beating at a certain rate. What rate? I have no idea. It varies from person to person according to your size and how thick your blood vessels are and what kind of exercise you've been doing for the last 30 years and all this other stuff. But your heart is working at your rate for sitting. Now you get up and leave here and you run for the bus. Your heart rate is going to change. Probably it will increase. And if you're running uphill, it will increase accordingly. How much should it increase? Well, it depends upon you. It's different for everybody, but it is the job of your intelligence to adapt your heart. No doctor alive studying your physiology for 1,000 years can tell you what changes there should be in your blood pressure in response to the need of running up that hill for the bus. And yet your body knows it and reacts instantly. The innate intelligence is that which regulates it. It is the innate intelligence which sends impulses down to the muscles of the legs, causing them to contract so that you can take the running action. It is the innate intelligence which sends impulses to the heart to increase its rate, to the lungs to increase your breathing, to the blood vessels of the digestive system so you stop digesting your food because all that blood is needed in the muscles so you can do your running. And then all of a sudden, if you had a meal recently, running up the hill, you got a cramp. Why'd you get that? Because there's no blood to digest the food. It's all down in your legs doing what it's supposed to. It is the job of the innate intelligence to regulate everything. It regulates how much adrenaline the adrenal gland puts out to sustain muscle action and increase heart rate and the depth of the heartbeat. All of that is organized and coordinated by the innate intelligence. That's the job of the innate intelligence. So every living thing has an innate intelligence. What about a corpse? Well, the corpse doesn't run for the bus. If I cut my hand, I don't sit up nights hoping that the body knows what kind of tissue to make to heal the hand. I trust it. If I cut the corpse, it's not going to heal at all. Do you ever sit up nights and worry if you cut your hand, I hope it doesn't form eyeballs? Wouldn't it be terrible? You'd be afraid to applaud. See, constantly we trust the body, we trust this innate intelligence to know what it's doing because of a very important chiropractic principle. And I want to mention this one, and I'll probably mention it again and again and again. There is an innate awareness of every innate need. The innate intelligence, the intelligence which runs the body, is constantly aware of the situation reports of the body. It knows what's going on in all parts of the body in order to adapt. At any given second, your innate intelligence must know the ratio of blood in the muscles of the legs compared to the blood in the stomach. Where is there a reservoir? If the muscles in the legs demand more because you're forcing yourself to run from a chasing lion, the innate intelligence must know where to get that extra blood. Well, there's plenty in your face you're not using, so it pulls it out of there, and somebody stops you afterwards, and you're white as a ghost. I wonder why. Well, you got no blood left up there. Huh? And you're shaking, you're tremors, you're goosebumps. Why? Because all that adrenaline that's in your bloodstream is making you shake. That's what it does. Pours out energy. The innate intelligence does whatever it is necessary to do every second of every day to keep you alive, to resist infections, to heal from disease, to digest your food, to change your moods, to utilize your skills. Everything is regulated by the innate intelligence. Well, can we say then that life is innate intelligence? No, we can't say that. Think true. Innate intelligence has no tangible presence. And if it's not tangible, it's certainly not life. What is life? That's a good question. What is life? The philosophers have been arguing about this for thousands of years. Mark Twain had the answer. Mark Twain said, life is one damn thing after another. In developing the philosophy of chiropractic, B.J. Palmer said, life is the expression of intelligence through matter. Intelligence alone is not life. Matter alone is not life. When the intelligence expresses through the matter, then you have life. But I'm going to change that, with your permission, and with BJ's. I haven't consulted with him, but I'm sure it'll be okay with him. I want to explain it this way. Certain people feel that all matter is expressing intelligence. We've said if matter didn't express universal intelligence, it couldn't exist. So all matter is an expression of universal intelligence. How then do we differentiate between all matter and living matter? We need to change our language a little bit. Some people say, well, all matter expresses intelligence, there's motion in all things, the molecules are moving. Really, everything is alive. That's terrific, except when you say that, the word life no longer has the meaning that most of us use for it. I want to differentiate between me and my corpse, okay? My corpse is lying there. If you want to tell me it has life, that's terrific, but that's not how I'm using the word. When I say life, I'm talking about an expression of the innate intelligence rather than universal intelligence. All matter exists as an expression of universal intelligence. Living things are an expression of innate intelligence. We've said innate intelligence is a part of universal intelligence. Obviously, if the term universal intelligence means all the intelligence of the universe, then any intelligence has to be a part of it. Innate intelligence is a part of universal intelligence, but it's apart from universal intelligence. It's a separate, identifiable entity. B.J. Palmer said it's like talking about the sun and the rays of the sun. You couldn't have any rays if they weren't a sun. Universal intelligence is like the sun, and the rays, the expressions, are innate intelligence. The term innate intelligence, remember, is a man-made term, and it describes that intelligence which keeps your body alive by adapting to an ever-changing environment. Now, you're going to hear this term innate intelligence misused by chiropractors who say, well, innate wanted me to practice in this town. I don't know who wanted them to practice in town. I don't know what wanted them to practice in this town. They may even be in touch with the cosmos. But if they say they got it from the cosmos, let them say that. Not misuse a very important term, innate intelligence. The job of the innate intelligence is to run the physical body. Right? It is aware of all of the needs of all of the parts of the body, and its job is to reorganize them. It doesn't make your mental decisions for you. It doesn't make your emotional decisions for you. Good Lord, you have an educated mind to relate to the outside world. The innate mind is to run the body. Now, am I being weird in saying you have an innate mind or an innate intelligence? No, I'm just making up terminology that will express who we are and what we are and how we're different from a corpse. And what makes me different from a corpse is that I reorganize myself intelligently. But I'm not smart enough to do it. You know, a newborn baby who never went to school knows how to make insulin and cortisone and adrenaline. And when he's born, nobody has to tell the newborn baby where to get milk. No mother has to grab his head and say, hey, get it from here. He knows where to go. He has an innate, built-in wisdom that knows certain things. Now, it doesn't know everything, and certainly a lot of things that he must learn about his environment. He doesn't know yet that fire is hot. That's something he has to learn. That's why he must have parents to help him and guide him and show him these things and keep him safe until he's learned enough to be safe on his own. But in the running of his body, when he's hungry and when he's not, he doesn't be done. You think your baby needs to be told when to wet? No, they know when to wet and they know how. And they know when to sleep. Mama doesn't need to tell them it's time for bed now. They know when to sleep. I've seen chiropractors tell patients, well, you need 10 glasses of water a day. Really? Supposing they need 12 or only 8. See, we're all different. None of us have the same needs. Oh, the average is 10. Terrific. Am I average? Are you average? Let's not fall into the inductive trap again. Deductive reasoning tells us, trust this intelligence. It knows more about your body than all the scientists in the world put together will ever know about your body. Scientists know about all the bodies and the averages. Only the innate intelligence knows about your body. So we're going to trust that innate intelligence to run the body. That's what chiropractic is based upon. Now, where is this innate intelligence then? Is it up in the brain, keeping in touch with all the parts over the nerves? No. Well, where is it? I thought it was in the brain. No, it's not there. Where is it? It's nowhere. It's not a thing. It doesn't have a location. It doesn't get to all the parts over the nerves. You hear chiropractors talking about a subluxation blocks the flow of innate. Innate doesn't flow. In fact, it's not innate. Please remember, don't use the term innate. Its last name is intelligence. And when you call it innate, you sometimes forget how intelligent it is. Let's call it innate intelligence. And all it means is that the body functions intelligently. The intelligence doesn't have a location. It's not blocked. I mean, there's enough damage done by vertebral subluxation, blocking impulses getting from the brain to the body parts, blocking the communication system, blocking information from getting from the parts back to the brain. Subluxation does enough damage without blocking something that can't be blocked in the first place. Innate intelligence has no location. We're merely saying that anything alive is staying alive by reorganizing itself intelligently. All right? Then what is life? It is the expression of innate intelligence through innate matter. For there to be life, there must be physical substance. Innate matter. Now, what is innate matter? Well, it's all of the matter controlled by the innate intelligence, meaning it's you. Simple language. Let's talk for a moment about matter. Matter is anything which has weight and occupies space. Anything physical, tangible is matter. The matter which your innate intelligence controls, we label innate matter. Now, it's not always as easy to know which is which as it is to understand the theory. For example, let me take an apple. I hold it in my hand. Is that part of my innate matter? No, because I can put it down and walk away from it. It's not part of me. It's not under the control of my innate intelligence. It's under the control of my educated intelligence. I can determine whether to take a bite of that apple or not. And let's say I do. I bite a piece out and now it's in my mouth. Is that part of me? All right, I chew it up and I swallow it. It's in my digestive system. It's in my stomach. Is it part of me? The anatomists and the physiologists tell us that the digestive system is a tube running through the body. Everything in the digestive system is outside the human body. It's not of the body. But at some point, as digestive juices are made in response to the presence of that apple, as the churning of the stomach breaks it down and the juices act upon it, it changes its substance until it can be absorbed through the walls of the intestinal villi, and it becomes a part of you. And tomorrow morning, that apple is going to be eyeball that can see, and hair and fingernails and kidneys. Then it's part of innate matter. All matter that is under the control of the innate intelligence, we are labeling innate matter. Please understand, we're just putting labels on things for the sake of convenient communication. What is life? It is the expression of innate intelligence through innate matter. What is health? You're interested in health? Health is 100% of life. What's life? The expression of innate intelligence through innate matter. When some of the matter is not expressing the intelligence, then you have less than total life. You've lost some health. You're in a state of dis-ease. Doesn't mean you have a disease. You're in a state of dis-ease. I'm not crazy about that term. That was B.J. Palmer's chiropractic term, and we're stuck with it. It's been distorted too much. Now people mix it up with disease. And say, well, you have a disease. What disease do I have? You've got to stick labels on things because you can't treat a disease till you know what it is. Dis-ease doesn't mean you have a disease. It merely means you're functioning at less than 100% of life. Some of your innate matter is not under the control of the innate intelligence, which means it's not really innate matter anymore, it's just matter. I think instead of dis-ease, I may prefer the word disorder. The body is in a state of disorder, but even that has been abused. Now they talk about a stomach disorder and a mental disorder and a kidney disorder, stick labels on that. So let's forget disorder. How about disharmony? That's the best one. You are in a state of disharmony. this ain't running that. Isn't that nice? 70,000 billion cells, and they're not all coordinated. You're in a state of disharmony. The job then is to reunite the intelligence with the matter. Yeah, but the intelligence is not in the brain traveling over nerves to the matter. How does this disharmony occur? What is it? Well, we have to understand, and now we're getting into the absolute essence of chiropractic philosophy, the one phase of chiropractic philosophy that makes everything else make sense. In order for innate intelligence to control and regulate innate matter, there must be a link. And that link we have labeled innate energy or innate force, either term. Innate, I'll put innate force on this side, so it can use either one. Energy and force are interchangeable in physics. Back in 1895, they talked about innate force. Today, the more common word is energy, but they're interchangeable, they mean the same thing. What is innate energy or innate force? It is any universal force which is under the control of the innate intelligence. What is a universal force? Any force of the universe. Any force that's in the universe, any force that exists is a universal force. Universal forces, unfortunately, tend to be destructive to structural matter. They tend to be destructive because they are not harnessed. They're what? Did you see the lightning tonight? And the rain, the torrents? That rain and lightning could tear down buildings. And yet man, using his educated intelligence, can convert the lightning and the rain into electricity, which is utilized. Universal forces tend to be destructive towards structural matter because they're not adapted. They're untamed, they're raw, they're unharnessed, and therefore can be dangerous. It is the job of the innate intelligence to take these universal forces and adapt those that it can for use within the body. When it adapts a universal force, we change its name. Now we're going to call it an innate force. An innate force is any universal force which is adapted for use within the body. Let's talk about a chiropractic adjustment for a moment. What is the chiropractor doing to somebody's spine? Putting in a force. Well, damn it, putting in a force is what caused the subluxation in the first place. Yeah, but that was a force that was unadapted. What we're trying to do is put in a force at the right time, the right place, the right direction, so that it can be adapted. Chiropractors don't correct subluxations. Chiropractors introduce a force which the innate intelligence converts into an innate force and makes the adjustment. Remember we said it's all well and good to change somebody's blood pressure, but you better know first what it should be, or change their body temperature, but you better know first what it should be. The same is true of the position of their vertebrae. See, no chiropractor is qualified to know where the bone should be. We can look at them and say, hey, that's where it shouldn't be. We know that one's out of place, but where its exact positioning is, hey, the innate intelligence knows that. Why doesn't the innate intelligence correct it? Well, it doesn't have an available force at the present time, strong enough or directional enough to be utilized. So the chiropractor comes along, takes a universal force, refines it through his mind and his education and his trained muscles, and kind of refines it and gives it to the body at the place where we believe it can most effectively be used. And the body, if we're lucky, picks up on it, converts it into an adjustment. At that moment, it goes from being a universal force, unadapted, through the chiropractor into what? An intercessor's force or a chiropractor's force, gets accepted by the body, becomes an innate force, and is utilized within the body. Now that's only one example of an innate force. There are other kinds of innate forces which we're going to be talking about. What is life? The expression of intelligence through matter, but it can't happen except through the link of innate force. It is innate force or innate energy which links the intelligence with the matter and the matter with the intelligence. An ongoing thing. Where do innate forces come from? From the universe. Where does innate matter come from? From the universe. When they're outside the body, we call them universal. As they're adapted for use within the body, we call them innate. Now we have the triune of life. Life consists of a triune. innate intelligence, innate matter, innate force. When the triune is perfect, you have full expression of life. If you damage the triune, if you interfere with the ability of the intelligence to run the matter and the energy, then you have disharmony, disorder, or dis-ease. And it is the job of chiropractors to try and correct the cause of dis-ease.